If you're thinking about moving to Barbados for work, there are a couple of things that I wanted to share with you that I thought are common misconceptions or at least misplaced expectations that some people tend to have. This isn't going to be a very long video because my work experience in Barbados isn't extensive. I've only been working here for a little bit under 3 years, and I've only ever worked for one organization in Barbados, and so my experience is limited to just that. But I also consider a part of my experiences to be information and stories that I've heard from my friends and people I've interacted with and engaged with while I've been working here in Barbados. So this video is centered around conversations I've had with them as well as my own experience, as limited as it may be. But if you have experience as well with any of the things that I talk about, any of the misconceptions that people have, please share in the comments below so that it could be a resource or just information sharing for persons who are looking to move to Barbados to come and work here. So the first misconception that I find people have about working in Barbados is that everybody makes a ton of money. And that's a huge misconception. I was actually doing some research on this, looking at not just the cost of living for Barbados, but the cost of living for places across the region. And it's interesting to find that in Barbados, the average person makes around $3,000 to $5,000. And even though that sounds like a lot, you still have to factor in the cost of living. So if you're making around $3,000 to $5,000 a month, you have to pay rent, you have to pay utilities. If you have, most people tend to have personal loans, whether that's for education, for a car, for a home if they have a mortgage, and if you have dependents. So at the end of the day, that kind of money, $3,000 to $5,000, will feel a lot more difficult to work with when you're living in a country like Barbados. If you are making $3,000 to $5,000, if you're living in a country like Belize or maybe St. Lucia or maybe Guyana or Trinidad, that may go a lot farther, but here it doesn't go that far. So the idea that people make a lot of money is just completely wrong. That's not a lot. And even when you think about it on a global perspective, $3,000 to $5,000 a month, especially if that's before taxes, is not a lot for you to work with, especially if you have dependents, if you have major financial commitments or obligations. So that's one of the most common misconceptions I find that people have about working in Barbados. The other misconception I find people have about working in Barbados is that it's easy to find a job. I can tell you from personal experience, it's not easy to find a job. Before I moved here, I was looking for a job for I think about a year, if not longer than a year, before I finally decided to just come, bite the bullet, start off with something small and see if I could find something a bit more substantial while I was living here. At the time, I was working as an intern, making $18 an hour. I think the reason why it's so difficult for people to find jobs here is that even though Barbados is a hub for a lot of regional organizations, for a lot of international organizations, a lot of the jobs are either outsourced or they're filled internally or they're filled by referral. So it's very hard to be able to break into a lot of the regional organizations, international organizations, that kind of sector, public sector type places. When it comes to even tourism, even though this is a tourist destination, a massive tourist destination, that market is also very highly saturated. And when you do get into those markets, the persons that make the higher paying jobs are persons in administration. So yes, while you work in the service industry, you make a lot of really good tips. It's still very difficult to be able to find a job that is substantial, that is stable, and that it will consistently allow for upward mobility. I'm not saying that it's not possible. It's definitely possible, but it's just a lot more difficult than people think it is. So That's the other misconception, that it's easy to get a job. It's when you come here, you can start working just like that. Even people who've lived here their entire life, born and raised, even they find it difficult to find jobs. I have a lot of friends who are well educated, who have a lot of relevant experience, who still find it difficult to find jobs. So I wouldn't say that it's an easy place for you to find a job. And then the last misconception that I find, and this isn't just related to Barbados, I find that people have about the region in general, is that the work culture here is so happy and positive and vibesy and easygoing and happy-go-lucky. It's not. And I think that's just the nature of humans. Regardless of where you are in the world, there's going to be conflict. There are going to be times when you feel like you're not in a healthy, productive work environment, and that's also the case here. It doesn't make a difference that we're on an island and there's sun and sea. People don't show up to work in flip-flops and board shorts. I mean, some people do because of the nature of their job, but in general, most people show up to their 9 to 5 or 8:30 to 5, 8:30 to 4:30, or their 8 to 5 in regular work clothes, and have to deal with the daily stresses of life like everybody else who goes to work. There are obviously work environments that can be healthy and productive and that can allow you to achieve upward mobility. And when I say that, I mean that you're able to move up in the company. So if you start off maybe as an assistant, then you can go up to middle manager, then you can maybe be a vice president. There are not a lot of companies that allow for that. Many people, in fact, that was in the news I think a couple of months ago, or maybe even last year, where it said that the Barbadian public sector hadn't had a raise in like years. And that's just the case here. And it's not just, and I had said this before, it's not just Barbados, it's the Caribbean in general, in that upward mobility and a healthy work environments are common, and that's completely unfortunate. For me, I find the environment that I work in is very healthy and very productive, and I think that's part of the reason why I say it all the time. I really enjoy my job, is not only because they compensate you and you get different benefits and allowances, but also they treat you like a human being and they value your input. They seek it out. They are willing to especially at the university, and I think that's also why the university has the lowest turnover rate probably in the entire region, because they value innovation and progressive thought and all of those things. It's not a perfect institution. No institution is perfect, but I can genuinely say that where I work, that kind of environment, that kind of thinking and productivity is encouraged. You're encouraged to do better. You're encouraged to pursue higher learning. You're encouraged to seek out positions to establish growth and development, not just for yourself, but for the benefit of our students and for our university. And that's not a common thing. It's definitely not common. I know a lot of persons who, and I've been one of those persons as well, who've just been completely unfulfilled, unhappy in their jobs. And I'm not sure if that has necessarily to only do with how much you're paid. I think it also has to do with your purpose, motive, and feeling valued. A lot of workplaces treat you like you're disposable, and that's the case in Barbados. That's the case in the region in a lot of ways. And I hope that one day that changes. But yeah, those are the 3 misconceptions that I find people have about working in Barbados. I wanted to be able to talk about this a little so that you guys can have some more insight about what it's like to not only just live here but also work here. I'm definitely not an expert on how to find a job or what kind of how to apply for jobs, how to get interviews, but I will leave links to sites that were really helpful for me when I was trying to break into the job market here in Barbados. And yeah, that's it from me. I'll see you in my next one.